It was late on a Friday night when it occurred, in what police later described as a cold-blooded execution. Sources say Dosanjh was lured to the back alley on the 6100 block of Prince Edward Street under the guise of inspecting the shipment. Investigators believe the ambush was orchestrated by his own associates, whose loyalties had secretly shifted to rival Bindy Johal. The hit, allegedly carried out by men who Dosanjh trusted, marked a bloody escalation in the city's ongoing gang war. This dispute between Bindy Johal and the Dosanjh brothers is what led to some of Canada's first celebrity gangsters. Unlike traditional mobsters who stayed in the shadows, they used the media as a battlefield, appearing on news programs to trade insults and death threats in real time. In April of 1994, the CTV News Hour aired a surreal segment that essentially treated a gang war like a professional wrestling promo. At the time, Jimmy Dosanjh had just been murdered, and according to Samuel Kerr's article in Medium, Bindy Johal was the prime suspect. In a now infamous clip, Ron Dosanjh appeared on camera to address Johal directly. He famously told the reporter that if he saw Johal at his house, he'd shoot him between the eyes. He mocked Johal, calling him a nobody, and famously saying, "Maybe that's why your life is worth a loonie on the streets." In response, Johal, dressed in a leather jacket with his hair styled high after he was invited into the studio to respond. He was cold and dismissive, telling the cameras, "This Jimmy Dosanjh, they portrayed him as a hitman. From what I've seen of him on the street, I don't think he could hit his way out of a paper bag." In April of 1994, the CTV News Hour aired a surreal segment that essentially treated a gang war like a professional wrestling promo. At the time, Jimmy Dosanjh had just been murdered, and according to Samuel Kerr's article in Medium, Bindy Johal was the prime suspect. In a now infamous clip, Ron Dosanjh appeared on camera to address Johal directly. He famously told the reporter that if he saw Johal at his house, he'd shoot him between the eyes. He mocked Johal, calling him a nobody, and famously saying, "Maybe that's why your life is worth a loonie on the streets." In response, Johal, dressed in a leather jacket with his hair styled high after he was invited into the studio to respond. He was cold and dismissive, telling the cameras, "This Jimmy Dosanjh, they portrayed him as a hitman. From what I've seen of him on the street, I don't think he could hit his way out of a paper bag." Perhaps the most famous piece of footage in Canadian gang history came after an assassination attempt on Johal. While he was in hiding, a hit squad mistakenly targeted his neighbor, who was walking Bindy's dog. The neighbor was killed in a hail of AK-47 fire. A CBC News crew tracked Johal down a week later. Standing by a red Acura NSX, Johal looked directly into the lens and delivered his most famous line. "I just want these guys to know, you've got another thing coming, bitch. I'm still around." Just days after this legendary media beef, Ron Dosanjh was sadly assassinated while stopped at a red light. He was in his red pickup truck when gunmen pulled alongside and opened fire with an AK-47, killing him instantly. Johal and 5 co-accused were eventually charged with the Dosanjh murders in that same year. This became one of the most expensive and scandalous trials in Canadian history.